Hi, and welcome to the New Earth podcast, which will guide you towards awakening and the embodiment of your highest self through holistic living advice, science, yoga, personal experiences, and expert guests. Let's grow together and build a new Earth. I'm Nancy Crupi, I'm a scientist, and I have a PhD in biology and 15 years of international scientific research experience in fields from inflammation to aging, neurobiology, nutrition, metabolic disorders, and much more. I'm also a Kundalini Awakened spiritual teacher, healer, and coach, and I practice and teach Kundalini Tantra.
And I'm Robie Newman-Paris. I'm a biologist with experience in neuroscience, and I've studied the ancient yogic sciences as well as other Eastern philosophies with gurus and yogis while spending a year and a half in India and in Bali. I now teach Kriya Yoga, breathwork, and meditation and help guide people in their spiritual development.
Hello, welcome to the podcast. Welcome everyone. Another episode of the New Earth podcast. Today we're joined by a very special guest. She is a medicine woman. She is a healer of many modalities. She has deep knowledge also on the sciences, on many different topics, and we're very excited to talk today with Lumina.
Hello. Hi, Dr. Nancy. Hello, Robbie. How are you both?
Great.
Hello.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank
Hello,
you so
hello,
much.
Lumina. Talk a little louder to make sure that we can hear you.
Absolutely. Thank you for that lovely introduction, by the way. That's very
Yeah.
sweet, very kind. I feel very blessed and fortunate to be joining you today on this podcast. I'm excited to see where we're going to go. Let's go
Yeah.
in so many different directions of love.
Yes, absolutely. And we always like to start with people's story, in the sense that this is a podcast about the experience of awakening. And really, we want to give people the personal perspective of people who truly use different kinds of medicine, different kinds of healing practices, so that they can give us not just something that they've read and learned on the books, but their actual experience on themselves and especially on themselves. But for you, you are also a practitioner, and so you also can give us a lot of information about what you usually find in your own patients and clients. So we're very, very excited to have you here today. You can really give a very valuable contribution to our podcast and to our audience. So welcome her today. And yes, tell us about your story. How did you start? Where did you come from?
Thank you. Where did I start? Where I came from? Well, my name is Lumina. My spirit name is Shikoatahekatwitzilim, which is the turquoise snake, the hummingbird of the wind. I am a descendant of the Mexica, Yaqui, and Purepecha nations of the indigenous people of Mexico, or Mexico, and I was born here in San Diego. And so I have been raised here in California. Love it here. I love California. I think it's the most amazing place in the world. So much diversity. I mean, it's just in the ecosystem and in the people and the food, especially. Ooh, I love the
Yeah.
food. But here in this beautiful place, I found some really dark moments too. And that's what led me to the healing path I'm on now. Um, Coming from just ancestral lines of generational trauma and also gender and just all these strange religious programmings and gender roles that are programmed into being Latina and being Hispanic in an American society with very, very Mexican parents. I'm first generation, so they came literally straight from Mexico and decided to come and have a better life here. And I feel so fortunate to have had them as parents, although oftentimes in my youth they were not the easiest. We choose some very strong paths as healers. That's something I've learned along the way. For many of us, I think, that have stepped into this realm of helping others, it's because we also signed up to go through the gamut and find our way crawling, standing, wobbly knees, getting, in a place of sovereignty, trying to integrate wisdoms, finding out why did I keep doing this to myself? Why is this happening to me? Am I here to like heal some ancestral line? What the heck is going on? Right? So, in that being said, I had some isms that were in my family. So, there was emotional abuse, mental abuse, there was incest, there was addictions, there was a lot that was going on, and things that I had to go through and grow through because we're all gifted that opportunity. We're always gifted the opportunities of change, but few of us take the opportunity to grow.
Mm.
And
That's
that's always something that teaches us deep wisdoms about how amazingly radiant you truly are. And whether it's any forms of stuff we've had to struggle through, never minimize it, because it's made you and molded you into the powerful, radiant soul you are today. We sign up for it Akashically to go through some nasty stuff. So I started learning my healing modalities when I have a bachelor's in psych, and I also have a counseling degree. So I worked many years in trauma-informed dual diagnosis treatment centers, over a decade, based on those credentials and certifications and classes and courses, and truly a deep love to help out people that have experienced trauma because of coming from trauma. As you know, there's a certain this like affinity we have for the underdog, because we were underdogs in our family, or we were underdogs within whatever context we put ourselves into, a box of shame, and fractalize our divine soul from who we are, right? And so I did that for 10 years, got out of the field when it was just insane fentanyl going crazy, and I was losing so many clients, and it was heartbreaking no matter how much therapy I went through, and seeing thousands of clients in over a decade long and burying hundreds of them. I was just drained emotionally. And so, being a person that was very sensitive, empathetic, empathic, sorry, and also psychic from a young age, and not having the disciplines of how to grow those, but told I should shut them down because I wasn't praying enough, or I wasn't doing enough Catholic rituals, I didn't go to church enough, or whatever, and I'm tattooed and I'm wild. And my mom was like, "You're the last person that should have these gifts." And so, having all this sensitivity, working in a counseling field and not knowing how to really protect my energy and not feel like I was overextending myself, and then coming home drained and literally like dragging my knuckles, just trying to get to some sort of peace. Um, I developed a love for Buddhism. That was one of the things that truly started my path into spirituality. And I started to go to a Theravada Buddhist temple in my master Shanti. He's incredible. He's just this incredible Sri Lankan Buddhist monk that brought the teachings and the philosophy of the Buddha into my life, and I developed so much discipline and understanding deeper of meditation. Having gone through 12 steps, there was a lot of beautiful places that I learned from, but there were some things that were missing, in the sense of there was very little education on how to actually meditate, how to actually create more of a deeper spiritual connection. And from what I knew of my personal experience and my studies, is something Carl Jung always would talk about: people that have addictions and isms and trauma, that have very self-defeating ingrained behaviors, tend to come from a lack of feeling of spiritual connection. Carl Jung spoke about that deeply. In fact, Bill W. is one of his clients, but that's a whole different other story that some people can get really like, what about? So I began to develop a way of bringing in spirituality into my practice as a counselor. I specialized in codependency and intimacy issues when I was working in the field. And I loved incorporating the meditation, the gongs, the sounds, the incense, the guided breath, all of the beautiful ways of the Eight Noble Fold Path. And my clients always were like, "You're that counselor on the fringe." You're a little on the wonky side. You're not quite traditional. But thank you, because I feel seen, heard, and understood. And that was the main part I wanted to hear about. Because treatment has a way of being very mechanical in how we approach the wounds of others, to put it lightly. You know what I mean? So bringing in the spiritual aspects gave me so much joy. And it really felt like it was that missing piece to all of the education and the experience I had at that point as a professional. And then I left the field when fentanyl got crazy, and I kind of floundered. I discovered cannabis medicine, and I became certified as a cannabis coach through healer.com. So I've learned how to educate people through the endocannabinoid system and what plants can really do for us because of the terpenes, the essential oils that plants have in them, and how our body as divine receivers are actually meant to have that language with Mother Nature. And I began to get really fascinated because I'm going, wait a minute, this means a lot because there's so many ways that Mother Nature nourishes us and heals us. And it was just like mind blowing. So
Let's give
that began
a
my
bit
path.
of like, because a lot of people don't know what the endocannabinoid system is. So let's give
Ah,
a bit of introduction on this, like just an explanation. Because like what she's talking about is basically that nature and our body can talk to each other because we share similarities in our molecules, in our receptors, and so we have receptors and endocannabinoid systems, right,
In the
in our
brain.
brain and in our
yeah,
nervous system that
yeah,
basically are receptors for the same exact molecules that the cannabinoids are in nature, right? And
right.
so basically,
There's,
we and the
yeah,
plants produce the same kind of molecules and the same kind of receptors. And so we can
yes,
use and like we can heal each other once we join forces to heal
yes,
ourselves, right? Like the plants
yeah,
can help us. So it's just an aid that we receive from the universe, right? From like
it
all the things
is.
around us. And I say it all the time that really what we are is like the universe has been really split in all of its functions, and so now all of these functions that were once one are all split all across the world, and in a plant, in an animal, in a venom, in a food, all of these things are contained. All of these functions are just kind of scattered around. We need to just find them and join them, like enjoying again with them, so that we reach healing and oneness, right? So that's what she's
Yeah.
talking about. So you started becoming a
Interested in
cannabis
plants that
certified
way.
coach. So how do you do that? What do you do exactly with that? I'm very interested.
Oh my goodness. It was about a 300-hour course. And they do monthly free webinars, by the way, healer.com. I highly recommend it. Dr. Dustin Sulak is one of the nation's leading doctors, and he's based in Maryland, by the way. Incredible, just incredible. I learned so much about the the phytocannabinoids in the plant, the other cannabinoids like in cacao. There's like three powerful cannabinoids that our endocannabinoid system
Oh,
enjoys, right? Same here. Are we all drinking
Cheers.
cacao?
we're all
Cheers.
drinking cacao, mama
Salud.
cacao.
I love it. It's medicine. Plant medicine. There's one of the most beautiful plant medicines we can get. And when we
Mm.
develop a spiritual connection with the Mother Nature plants, oh my gosh, it takes things to the whole different world. So I spoke briefly about how my past had isms in it, right? Part of those isms
So
were
wait,
my addictive
what is
personality
an
of,
ism? What is
okay,
an
like
ism?
alcoholism, there's gambling, those are isms. Those are like life things that we do. I had alcoholism and addiction in my past where I wasn't intentional with my cannabis use. To
Mm-hmm.
segue into now understanding, having taken this course and teaching me about different ways of incorporating my spirituality to it, that when I drink cacao, I honor cacao. When I have CBD, I honor CBD. I don't just go, I'm gonna like zone out, peace out, this popsicle stand sucks, you know what I mean? It's not
Absolutely.
about that
And
anymore.
we talk about these sort of things all the time, that our society
Mhm.
ultimately has simply capitalism, right? It's simply to capitalize things and to monetize things as completely detached all the sacred side, like everything from its sacred side, because
Yeah,
food was has always been medicine. Like when people, we always had in paganism, we had for thousands of years rituals to thank nature for
yeah,
fertility, to thank the sun, to thank the
exactly.
plant. So we had all of these rituals in which everything we received was sacred. And
Mm.
then suddenly something happened to our society. Maybe the aliens landed on our planet, not sure what happened, but suddenly something happened that completely cut us out from our roots and from these very ancient and beautiful rituals to honor everything. Because it's one thing to use, so the same exact thing, cannabis, can have two completely opposite usages. So if you use it, the same thing as tobacco and everything. So if you use it in its most sacred way, in its most sacred ceremonial way to heal you.
I love that you brought up ritual because I literally have an altar set up here. You're gonna
You
laugh.
should show it.
I
You
Yeah,
should
thought,
definitely
please.
show it. I love it. I think what I want to show, like, I think the reason why for me, the reason why I'm interviewing you is exactly what you were saying right now. This
Yeah.
sacral component to everything, which changes everything, right? So this is really for me a core component of the reason why I'm interviewing you, because I love that, and I think this is the real reason we heal, because we are. So let's start over. Let's from this piece. So I was saying that so all these sacred things that we do, like we used to do all the time, we are now completely disconnected from them. I don't know what happened to our planet. Maybe aliens landed at some point, but like we have completely been disconnected from all these sacred side of things, the ritualistic side of things. But that's
Right.
really what's healing, what heals us. We in the previous episode actually, don't I only never in the previous episode, we've talked about the placebo effect, for example. So the placebo
Yeah.
effect is nothing else than our capability of self-healing and to join forces with whatever medicine we're using to heal. And so it's about the intentions. It's about setting the intentions and doing a ceremony and doing this sacred ritual for healing. So
Right.
the same exact substance, such as cannabinoids or any other thing, really can be used for healing or can be used recreationally. But recreational is quote unquote. What does that mean? It means that you can abuse it, that you're going to use it not in a ritualistic way, and so taking your time to do things. And this can go far as cleaning veggies. You know, like you can eat your veggies after you grew it as you
Yeah.
want them,
Yeah.
and then you clean them up and you take your time and then you cook them and then you eat them, and the whole process heals you and nourishes you. Or you can go
Yeah.
to a grocery store and buy a salad, a pre-made salad,
In a
and then
plastic
you
bag.
in a plastic
Right.
bag and then shovel it in your mouth.
Yeah.
It doesn't have the
Mouth.
same healing effect. You know, like
Yeah.
everything can be nourishing or can be just a way of poisoning your body, including the healthiest things, including today veganism. You know, people talk a lot about veganism, but then if you eat every
If you're
day vegan
eating the
burgers,
processed vegan food, very
yeah,
different, right? You're not going to
Right.
yeah,
get like the real thing. Yeah, and
exactly.
getting back to the importance of what happened with the ritualistic way in which we engaged in right relationship with Mother Earth is even studies show that the rise of industrialism is what started to really make the lowering of rituals.
Yeah,
And the lessening of rituals, it we begin to really take away from the spiritual foundation of societies as a
yeah,
whole. Really, it doesn't matter what religion you're practicing, but the busier the person is, the more in scarcity they feel, the more fear they feel,
Right.
the less they're able to really focus on how to make their life fuller when they're just
yeah,
trying to survive. And
Yeah.
so there's
And when
been
you
so much ebbs and flow with the industry and the lowering of rituals, the lowering of spiritual connection, the less emphasis on that, and it's just crippled society in many ways. But
yeah.
the understanding that intention is where we should be. Dr.
Yeah.
Masaru Emoto shows that in the water study. You put intention to the water, the individualized samples that he had done, and one of the samples had pure positivity, pure prayer, words of love, classical music, and it was he'd freeze the molecules, he'd freeze the samples of water, and he'd look at them, and they were crystalline. And then he took the other sample, and it was people were cursing at it, yelling at it, saying like just having nasty thoughts to it, and without speaking them even. That's how powerful the human body oscillates electromagnetically. The toroidal field that comes out of us is powerful. It's no joke, right? You see how those molecules, those samples were mutating. And he even took polluted water, he put it in the positive side, and he saw the molecules go from mutated to becoming structured again. So intention is extremely powerful when approaching anything in our life at the quantum level,
yeah,
right?
Yeah. And it's also like going back to the whole thing about ritualization. It's so important because everything that you're interacting with in the world, let's say the food that you eat, the liquids that you drink, all of the
Right.
little actions that you do when when you take, like for example, the cannabis and you smoke it, what you're doing is you're integrating the actual molecules of this other substance, of this other entity into your being. And the way to think about this is like a conversation, right? You're in
Yes.
a divine dialogue with whatever that substance is. And, if you're talking to a random person on the street, maybe this is someone you don't know already, maybe you're trying something new. It's really important that you go into it with the right intention and with, you open your heart and you want to connect to this person and build a beautiful, positive relationship with this person rather than just saying, oh, like I'm just going to take away this one quality from you because I'm feeling overstimulated and I need to relax right now. And then this person feels, neglected and abused and like that you're taking advantage of them. So when you think about all these things, and it relates to food as well, when you have that gratitude, when you have that two-way divine dialogue with all of these things, then you're honoring them and you're bringing, even if putting aside the whole spiritual thing where all of these things do have spirits behind them, but even on a biomechanical electromagnetic spectrum, like you're putting positive energy into that reaction, and that energy is then being integrated into your system, so that energy becomes your energy. We're taking in things from the outside and integrating them into our own being. And when we do that, it's so important to do it with the right intention, with the right energy, so that we can, we become what we eat. And if we eat negative energy with our processed foods, then we're going to become negative and overly processed and stuck up inside. But instead, if we eat the raw, fresh, healthy foods and we put our positive love into them, then we're gonna receive that love and we're gonna become that love and we're gonna be pure inside, and it's gonna be so much easier for us to walk through this world unobstructed by the negativity because we're coming from that pure base inside of ourselves.
Yeah, and it's the same thing for any medicine and anything. And it's not just about that. The intention is also about the time, in a sense, because the difference between, for example, herbal snuffs, right? That people can consider them closer to drugs that are used through the nose, but it's a completely different thing because there's a whole ritualistic aspect of things that completely changes. Because people that do cocaine, for example, they have zero ritual attached to it, and so they can snore as many as they like in as short time. So it becomes a compulsion, right? So instead, maybe even the same thing used in a better way will have a better effect. Everything can be used. Cocaine,
like the coca leaf. It's it's actually a leaf from Peru that comes from a bush that is treated with respect when they're using it in the typical way. But then it becomes extracted, used, and then now it becomes something that's not serving. It's not connecting to that highest good anymore.
Same thing for
like Mambe is derived from the cocoa plant. So I don't know if you've had experienced Mambe. They serve it in the Amazon with ambil. Ambil is the mapacho plant, the tobacco plant, and it's cooked down into a resin. They place a little dab on your hand, and then the mambe is passed around, which is powdered coca leaf, right? And it's done in a medicinal, intentional way. When people of a specific family or the tribe is having difficulty between each other, they sit down, a mambean, it's called. They're going to have a mambe, open heart, or, opening of the heart conversation to settle the waters as a community. And that's really beautiful. That's two substances that extremely get addicted and abused is cigarettes, tobacco, can ease, and that's one of the first plant medicines of Pachamama. Her son is tobacco. That's the first master plant you start working with before you do any work with any medicine plants. Right? You have to develop that connection with Mapacho, develop with the tobacco. And the other medicine plant that gets abused is cocaine that you mentioned. And those two plants, when used in a intentional way, in a sober-minded way, it's beautiful, the healing that comes from it. So I absolutely love working with Mother Nature's
and can you tell us
drugs.
also what is a master plan, just for our audience that doesn't know the context on that?
So master plants are plants that are welcomed in every ceremony, and that would be specifically tobacco's a master plant. Ayahuasca is also considered a master plant too because she takes us to a very mature, deep spiritual place as well. Um, Yeah, I would say probably those to me are the ones that are the most powerful. And many medicines get derived from like the chacruna or the bicopi and the like on tobacco itself. There's many ways in which we can use those. I'm thinking of other plants that I work with and other medicines I work with, like chacruna. There's the bicopi and the chacruna are the two vines that are mixed and cooked together for ayahuasca, which is practiced often in the Amazon. And Chacruna is a DMT holder of the two. She's also known as the princess of the Amazon. She's very gentle, very loving. But yeah, people can extremely abuse that one. It's all about intention, really, as we were talking about, truly. But yeah, we went off on some rabbit holes on that one. But yeah, the amazing part is at the quantum level, when we have true intention to heal, those medicines will heal us.
Yeah.
It depends on our intention. If we're not thorough, if we're not clear about where we want to go with this medicine, what do I want this medicine to do with me, for me, through me, then it's going to grasp onto the shadow. At the Akashic level, it's because we signed up to go through hardships in order to find the depth and radiance of true love, unconditional love, which is what our original state is in the ethers with Source, right?
Yes.
So, intention towards any medicine is going to either grab onto the light or grab onto your shadow and give you a little bit more shadow work to do. Kind of turn up the volume on the uncomfortable stuff. It just
Yeah.
happens that way, and then it turns into an addiction.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And like we talked in the previous this episode, we made an episode on placebo, and we
I think it was
talked
a couple
exactly.
back now.
But we talked exactly. We talked exactly about this, about having the intention and knowing where you're headed, because it's like we're fulfilling a prophecy or a sponge. We called it a sponge, right? We are walking towards. We decided what our sponge is supposed to be like, and then we can attract things into it thanks to the
Mhm.
tension that the sponge creates. And our brain is a sponge, and so whenever you use a plant that, like mapacho, for example, mapacho, like white tobacco, is a plant that is medicinal. So tobacco and nicotine especially, is a precursor or a very important molecule it's the most important molecule in our body in a sense, which is the NADH. NADH in English. Basically, this molecule is nicotine is a precursor of that. And that molecule is the one that our cells use to produce energy
Mhm.
for contraction as much as for intellect, for consciousness, for cognitive behaviors and functions. And so that means that with mapacho or with tobacco, what we can do, we're giving through our lungs, which is the easiest way of absorbing things is through our lungs.
Blood-brain barrier
So
goes right through it,
it's the
right?
fastest way of
Yeah.
absorbing energy and to give it to our brain. We are basically
Mhm.
giving energy to our brain immediately. And so whenever we use, and in fact, tobacco can be used coupled with a lot of different medicines, as you're saying. It's a master plant. Why? Because if you use medicine that activates part of your brain, such as the cortical part of the brain, such as cannabinoids or the ayahuasca or different kinds of medicines that activate the cortex, which is the part of our brain that we need to grow because it's the part where our consciousness is, and it's often atrophied by stress and PTSD. So when we put the intention of, I want to be conscious, I want to grow, I want to solve this task, I want to solve this challenge, right? To go through this thing. What we're doing is we're telling our brain, I need to activate these parts of my brain. But those parts of your brain to be activated and to work, they need energy. And so that
Right.
energy, that's why people when they smoke cannabis, they have the munchies afterwards, because it's your
Mhm.
brain overworking so much. It's telling you, I need energy now because I
You
worked
got
a
to kick
lot.
off that ATP process, right?
Yes, exactly. And so it's like so basically with the by giving nicotine, and I'm not suggesting people to smoke again, we're talking about rituals. So it's a completely different type of activities. Not This is not for recreational drugs. This is a way of
Right.
using substances in nature as with their healing potential, healing power, which includes also the consciousness of the plant that
Mhm.
works together with our consciousness in a ritualistic way so that you can actually use them to heal instead of just getting stoned. And so, if after using things that activate those parts of your brain, then you also give through your lungs the energy that your brain needs to do those things, you're basically boosting this effect. Because otherwise, if you give the task of activating the brain, but then you don't give it the energy, you can't actually do that. And so that's why I think it makes total sense that in shamanic medicine in the Amazon, people use mapacho, which is the sacred plant of tobacco, so
Yeah.
much in so many
Often.
rituals, and in that's Crupi, which is the pipe to use rapé, which is a
Rapid
tobacco snuff,
tobacco.
a tobacco-based snuff. She can talk about that later, much better than me. And so, yeah, so this is exactly what it makes total sense. And from a quantum standpoint, we talked about that already, but from a quantum standpoint, whenever what's the quantum field? Because I feel like we never talked about the quantum field in our podcast, probably. So I feel like just let's give a brief definition of what's the quantum field. Like reality is that, as we said already, time doesn't really exist. The only thing that exists is this never-ending present that is constantly existing. So everything exists at all times. We're like, the universe is like a plant that went from being a seed to being a full tree, and the whole identity of the universe, it's at all times all the different steps that the tree has had throughout time. So at all times all of these things exist all the time, including the future. And so what's the quantum field? The quantum field is you deciding what kind of future you want to create, what kind of present, how the next present is going to look like, where you want to put your energies, your resources, which includes your intentions, is what tells your brain what do you want to grow, where do you want to put your resources in the next present. And you're using the plant or the medicine or whatever medicine you're using to and we're talking about sacred medicine in this case, not Western medicine, whatever sacralistic kind of medicine you want to use to help you put your intentions. And so once you do that, then you have already created this quantum field, which is really the next present. It doesn't exist yet, but you have created this potential, which is the quantum field. And then you're just walking towards it in the next present. I feel like that's a good definition. Do you have a better definition of quantum field?
Well, it's so from like a physics standpoint, right? We know atoms. We know that atoms are composed of protons, neutrons, and electrons. But electrons are already a lot smaller than protons or neutrons. It's something that you don't learn unless you took physics classes. But they're actually really a lot smaller. And there's other subatomic particles that we know make up our protons and neutrons. At least this is what's theorized. And the way that these things interact is different from what we really experience at this gross physical level, where these things, they don't exist with the same rules of nature. So they have an innate quality. Each of them is something like a spin, which means that it's kind of the directionality of its energy, and then it has a charge. So there's different combinations of these things that make up all of the atoms and molecules in our existence. But at that very small level, these things don't have the same physical constraints that we have in our bigger 3D bodies, where they're able to almost like pop in and out of existence, at least from the experiments that we're able to see. When they, for example, at the giant CERN reactor, right, they're smashing these teeny little particles together at very, very, very high speeds. And they're actually creating, when that happens, from that energy, a lot of other subatomic particles are being created from that interaction. Like, where are they coming from? They were just kind of materialized out of this field, which is the field, the quantum field that we're talking about, where this is like it's almost like the difference between like potential energy and kinetic energy, whereas the potential energy is existing in this field at all times. It has the potential to kind of create anything. And the kinetic energy is when you actually see the expression of these particles coming into existence in a way that manipulates and interacts with the physical world. So
it becomes real.
It becomes real. It becomes manifested.
What's your definition?
If I can offer some information, and this is based on a lot of quantum physicists. One of my favorites is Dr. Samantha Mongier Lofton. She wrote Punk Science, The Mind of God, one of my favorite books. She's a phenomenal writer. Also, Dr. Irving Laszlo wrote the Akashic fields, the Akashic records in the field, the scientific field of the Akashic records. And it looks at what we're actually accessing is the 0-point field of creation, in which there is absolutely no movement at all. And that is where our original state is, in ethers. That is the dark matter. The dark matter comprises most of the universe. Most of your body is dark matter. There's nothing solid about you. Everything is in constant motion. Constant toroidal fields, constant energy at the subatomic level, beyond the cellular. At the elemental level, we experience that when we're in the 0-point field of creation, and Source comes to you and says, "Hey, Robbie, hey, Doctor, you guys want to check out what love is? I know it's comfy and cushy and it's amazing up here, and it's great. Your consciousness experiencing yourself, and it's so lovely, right? But do you really want to learn what love is?" And you said yes. If you were like hesitant to it, you said yes. Because every time we descend, we raise a dimension of consciousness every single experience we go through. So your yes was, it was the first, what was activated was hydrogen. That was the very first elemental. We look at the table of elements. Those are truly what holds the first container of source consciousness in it that takes us from the quantum field of 0 point creation into our first dimension, which is sound, right? That is dynamic wavelength information. The second dimension, as you vibrate higher, you vibrate denser, you attract matter. Second dimension is light. You're now dynamic, sound information, and now you're biophoton emission information. As you vibrate higher, because you want to keep on experiencing consciousness, you're igniting the hydrogen, the oxygen, the carbon, the nitrogen, and the carbon, the oxygen, the phosphorus as well, the light spark. Then you become this third dimensional elemental body that our spirit is now traveling through as a particle of the soul above, who is seeking to raise its consciousness, to go back to its original state with source once again, right?
Yeah.
I'm getting a quantum on you guys. And so from there on, the density goes up consciousness level. Fourth dimensional consciousness is the empaths, the intuitives, the animals. They show it in studies. In fact, Dr. Laughlin talks about it in her book, that the farmer gets hurt on one end of the farm and the cow runs to it to go see how it's doing. That's how intuitive animals are. Your pets know when you are a mile away from your house. They know electromagnetically. Your consciousness is a fourth dimension consciousness. When you are syncing up with someone that you're like, I feel their energy. Someone's looking at me. Boom, you look, they're looking at you. There's your fourth dimensional consciousness. So as we go up the dimensions, we're no longer physically dense. We are consciously dense, spiritually denser. Not in a bad way, but just saying like you're more of a heavyweight.
Yeah, and the beginning part that you're saying is really interesting also, because it's very much mirrored in, it's even biblical verses where, the first in the Genesis, the creation story, first was God,
Right.
and God, there was something like, I'm blanking on the exact line, but it's the word was like God, there was the word of God and the word was with God. So that word
Yes.
is the sound. And then God said, the next thing God said, he used that
Light.
vibration, let there be light. And then
Right.
light was created. And then there's all the rest of the story about how he created the earth and the waters and all of these things. But it's very interesting how the biblical truth actually tells the same story when you look at it through the right context.
Almost every single ancestral lineage from all different continents have that same consciousness in a very different way, because why? They all interpreted the star beings that would come down as gods, because they had no other word for it at that time. You look at the Sumerian, the hieroglyphs and the different the artwork that they made, they show people in alien like outfits and in spacesuits. You see these pyramids. No one questions the pyramids that are across the entire world, and even though they're very similar, and none of these people knew each other. There's such a higher intellect out there, and to not recognize that you are a particle of source creation, that means everything we ingest is a particle of source creation. Everything from the water, from the foods, from the plants. And if we're not intentionally connecting with it, we're missing out on the real game. We're missing out on the ability to truly ascend consciousness for ourselves and make it out of these self-defeating patterns that keep us out of right relationship with our divine nature.
Or just burning, like instead of like, because there are two ways of surviving on this planet, really being in orbit with it or falling on it due to gravity, right? And so whenever we just shovel things in our mouth or use drugs for recreational use or do things that are not really, or not being conscious, because consciousness it keeps you higher in your higher chakras and it allows you to stay in this trajectory of existence for a longer time, which means you have higher longevity and you can really orbit around the planet for a longer time, right? Because you're being conscious and you're consciously avoiding to get oxidized and to lose momentum and to lose power and to go down. And the more you go down, the more gravity pulls you down, right? So the other way of existing is instead is what most of the population is being indoctrinated to do, which is to have a very unhealthy lifestyle and very unconscious and irrational behavior in the world, so that they basically get all the side effects instead of the good effects. And so they lose this momentum and they live a very short life, which allows corporations to use people in this continuous turnover, because we just can be used and abused and then rejected, used, abused, and rejected. And they have a much easier life, because if we live like 150 years, then you can only use one person one time, and then you need to pay them the right amount of money, right? You need to give them vacation, you need to give them a pension, you need to give them a retirement. And instead, if we constantly are in this constant cycle in which we really have a very short life and a very short time on this planet, then we just stay here just long enough for us to realize what we're being put through. And then once we finally realize, we get rejected. And now this cycle is getting shorter and shorter with the newer generations, with the Gen Zs, which is reason why now corporations are implementing AI, because people are starting to refuse to undergo abuse very short, very early in their career, and so they can't really do anything. And so that's why they're implementing AI, because we are becoming useless, right? So the population, like the things that you're saying, industrialization, it's all goes together, you know.
And we're also being cut off from the elders of our communities. These are the people that really carry that wisdom. They've been through things, they've experienced them. And in the olden times, the elders were the ones that led the community. They're the ones that were able to act through wisdom, through the experiences they had, and they knew they were able to tune into that guidance. Because something else that happens to you when you get older, and again, I'm still pretty young, so this is speaking more from a perspective of other people that I've related to very closely, where when you get older, there's a certain slowing down that allows you to really commune, if you're open to that divine nature of things, a lot easier. Because I mean, generally, your life slows down. Maybe you had a family, now your kids are having their own families. You have that time to like really slow down. So all of these elders that were these just sources of wisdom, and they were also the ones that were carrying these traditions through the generations. They were passing it down orally, and they were really making sure that this the communal education of understanding how to connect with nature, how to connect with the divine source, was passed to the next generations. They're being cut off. I mean, number one, they're dying sooner. But also because of all the stimulations of our intense society, all the ways that we're being pushed into boxes, now all of our elders are developing dementia. They're going the opposite direction. They're being put into a very unhealthy place where they're not able to guide, and they're not able to help us to heal and to understand this is the traditions that we've been passed down. And instead we're
being also segregated spatially, like physically, like who can, with the pensions we receive from retirement we receive from the government, what elderly are capable of living in LA, for example? Nobody.
They can't even pay for their medications that the government put them on.
They're put into retirement homes. So what do you say?
I said they can't even pay for the medications that the government put them on. It's like, wait a minute.
Absolutely, that's interesting,
right? Big pharma.
So all of this does fulfill a design which is meant to keep people away from knowledge, because if you're ignorant, then it takes you time for you to realize the protocol, right? And the protocol is always the same. And so if you have elderly, so if we were allowed to simply evolve from our tribes to whatever society we could have created through our tribes, instead of being taken as slaves into empires where we go from slaves to awakening. So if we were just allowed for our tribes to evolve in their natural stage, today we will have a much more conscious society, because in a society in which we're close to elders and the elders teach you, and there's no segregation.
Right, they're living in the homes instead of somewhere else.
Yeah, and they're also, but like, so when you have everybody together, you really can live a much better life. There is a much lesser industrialization, a much lesser push towards capitalism, a much lesser push towards innovation. But what innovation can become really a de-evolution when it's not meant for survival. It's just meant for someone else to make a lot of money. So it's like, what is innovation? Innovation is useful until we use it for our well-being and for the well-being of the planet. Right. If we use innovation to abuse the planet, to abuse the population, to cultivate pathologies and illnesses, to cultivate to oppress other population all over the world so that we can exploit
our world. Yeah.
So that's not evolution. That's really like, it looks like almost like we're being colonized by aliens who are abusing our planets, because it really doesn't make any sense. So it's like, who is doing all of these things really has no empathy for
girl,
the
that's a whole
population
other
and for
conversation.
us. And that's exactly. So, but like,
We can get into the
regardless,
galactic side of that, the Akashic
no,
records, anytime you want to go to. That's
Let's
a whole
save
different
that for the
podcast.
second interview we have with you.
That's a different podcast.
But I would like to talk about the Akashic record, because it's a word that not a lot of people know. I feel like you do Akashic records readings, and I'm very interested in that. And I would like for you to explain to people what that entails, and then we can also go over the shamanic medicine side of it and what you do and how you use it. So yes, please.
Sure, I'd love to. So the Akashic records, it was first spoken about in the Mahabharata. It's in one of the Vedas of the Indian canon of scriptures. And it is entering the consciousness of the 0 point field. And the most common place a lot of the records are that most people go to and access is in the Pleiades, the fifth dimension of the Pleiades, right? Various Akashic records readers that people may be familiar with. It's also referred to in some scriptures as the Book of Souls. But some very famous Akashic records readers are Michelle de Nostradamus, Baba Vanga, Edgar Allan Casey, the sleeping psychic as well, and the Buddha. That was one of the most well-known accesses and drops in consciousness into the pineal gland of the Akashic records. Why? Because he saw himself from every single life form he had ever incarnated into before he became Gautama, Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha. And so he saw himself as the rocks, as the vegetation, as the animal eating the vegetation, the wild animal eating the vegetation, the wild animal being attacked, the wild animal being an attacker, the wild animal becoming now domesticated, the farmer that was overrunning the domesticated. Then he became the farmer. And so he saw every single evolution. Akashically, when we agree as a soul to, when we say yes to source, we went from first dimension, second dimension, third dimension. Well, that's what this is. This is third dimension. We are now in the school of hard knocks, if you want to say, right? We're literally learning every single aspect, the good, the bad, the ugly, the fuzzy, and the amazing of love. So that means you're going to agree to be either in any of the three cycles: creation, preservation, or destruction of life and consciousness. Because someone has to take a dip at the karmic level for another person to take a positive step forward. Everything is binary, right? Everything's positive and negative.
It's
Everything is
emotional
feminine or
waves.
masculine, right?
Yeah, we're
Because it's
constantly
all
expanding
charge related. It's all electromagnetically charge related, just as you are. Science has showed this. Dr. Valerie Hunt talked about how we are magnetic from the bottom. That is the toroidal field that we're in. We're in this beautiful electromagnetic bubble, and we are. This is where we change frequency at the heart, not at my bosom, but your bosom, but at the heart. This is where the energy is ascending from the root chakra, sacral, and the manipura, the third, and meets in the heart chakra because consciousness is descending. The feminine, the masculine, boom, creates. So Akashically, we are looking at absolutely every single exchange we have gone through at the contractual soul level to understand how am I going to evolve deeper in becoming and embodying my true nature, which is unconditional love.
So if I come to you and I ask you to read my Akashic record, what kind of answer could I expect from you?
I typically give my clients, I've been doing the records for about a decade now. And I'm a quantum alchemist in the records. So I don't just read you your past lives. You can come to me and go, "Oh, Lumina, tell me I was an incarnation of Cleopatra. I feel it. I know it." And I've had some, women that just didn't want to go that deep, and that's where they wanted to go to. And I was like, yeah, you have had an Egyptian incarnation. Most of us, because we agree to thousands of lifetimes here, have had incarnations in every single one of these ancient cultures because we had something to learn. from every single one of these ancient cultures. So some Akashic readers will tell you that stuff, and you're going to walk away going, oh my God, I was such a badass. That was this and that was that. However, a skilled Akashic Records readers can take you much deeper. They will show you the possible and the probable of what your life path is right now. The possible is if you do some soul work to connect deeper your consciousness of your spirit here in this timeline with your soul above you, you're going to get a beautiful, more radiant channel of connection, understanding, intuition stronger, your spiritual connection stronger, and you're going to be able to change and manifest and materialize a life that you really want to have, which will take you to less karma accumulation, less having to come back again, less having to repeat these patterns of self-sabotage with people that you keep going, I thought I changed. Why do I still have the same problem with my mother? Why do I have the same problem with guys? Why do I have the same problem with my partners? What the fuck? Right? If you do your soul work, you'll get out of these self-sabotaging behaviors. If you don't, and you just continue the trajectory of like, oh, this was my past life, this is so cool, I'm so happy, that's all I needed to know from this Akashic Records session, you've gained no wisdom to integrate. And as an alchemist in the Akashic Records, I help people reintegrate soul particles from past lifetimes. We look at, yes, you lived that lifetime. Let's look at the soul contract. Who was in your soul tribe that you made that agreement with that they were going to take the karmic dip for you to ascend consciousness? And why do you keep repeating this pattern in your present day life? Because you haven't integrated the wisdom from that past life. So as an Akashic Records session, when you come and you go, okay, Lumina, I want to keep knowing what's going on with that, we look at your past life that your soul is ready to let you integrate. Because the ones that come up in your session are the ones that are saying, okay, you've done enough work in this timeline, let's upscale. I'm done living the same pattern over and over again. This part of my soul from that lifetime is in agreement with the other part of that person's soul from my soul tribe and is ready to let me integrate my light back into myself so I can be more aligned, more in my purpose, more in my sovereignty, more in my integrity. So as an Akashic Records reader alchemist that I am, I help you walk you through that. And I have clients all over the world that when they're having these particles of their souls being fused back into their biofield, or they're being fused with various goddesses or gods in various upper dimensions, the more your consciousness is integrated from soul work, meditation, right mind, right consciousness, sometimes really going through deep medicine journeys, healing from traumas, the more your consciousness ascends, the higher dimension your consciousness is, and it can attach to then the deities that are here as soul tribe, spirit guides for you. And
That's
so the
beautiful.
more work you do, the more work I can help you with as an alchemist to go, awesome. Goddess Pele, she's ready to start working with you. That's one of the first goddesses that comes to people when they've ascended enough consciousness as a woman and they've done their healing from the abuse, the traumas, the abandonments, the this, the that. Certain goddesses will start to come in and say, I'm going to be part of your spirit guide. For men, one of the first ones that comes through is Krishna and the Buddha. They're the ones that are like, we're here to help you out. We're going to be your ascended masters up there to help your trajectory here so that you don't have to come back and repeat these patterns again.
Yeah, and what you're talking about is actually, all these traditions from all these different wisdom traditions are all telling you the same things. And this path you're describing is also very similar to the path of Tantra, where this is like an ancient Indian system. Where this is like the one thing that's I'd say the most misunderstood, even more than yoga in the modern world, where we think Tantra, oh, this is like I'm gonna like have this kind of like sexual connection with a person and use that energy for something mystical. But that's not really what Tantra is. Tantra is
Right.
finding a connection to a divine source, like a deity. And a deity is, in a lot of times people misunderstand this as well. A deity in the Indian system is not like, oh, there's a pantheon of many gods. In one sense,
Right.
that is true. But each of these deities represents a different aspect of that divine 0 point field that has all the possibilities of manifestation. And it's a way that in our human perspective, we can relate to that. Because if you say, the true God is nothingness, but also everythingness at the same time, in our limited perspective, we're like, I don't really understand that. I'm going to kind of push that off to the side and, go about my day. But when you give this kind of humanized characteristic where these deities do have some attributes that we can relate to a lot more closely, we're able to form that connection. And it's almost like these are the bridges, these are the intermediaries between us and that true source that we all come from. And when you do, like in the Tantra system, you make a certain relationship with a certain deity, and you take on, let's say, like a promise where like you can do a lot of different things. Like, okay, each deity has a different mantra. I'm gonna chant this mantra one
Right.
mala every day, and one mala is
Right.
like one of these that I'm wearing. They each have 108
One little
beads.
bead.
Yeah.
Right.
So you're gonna say, I'm gonna chant this mantra 108 times every day. Maybe it's for 40 days, maybe it's for in perpetuity, and you're kind of creating that initial contract with that divinity, and they're gonna be able to, when you do that, they're giving you their energy. You're integrating them into your system. You're integrating into their system, and the end goal of a lot of these tantric paths is actually complete union with whatever that deity is, so that you're becoming one with them. In that sense, they're bringing you into them, and then they can transmit you into the source. So it's about creating this divine relationship with this deity, and really embodying their characteristics and using them to transcend, again, what you're saying, the patterns of suffering where you're still locked in making the same mistake. Like, you're not really able to understand that this is going to take you out of that through that divine source, where you're still looking at these human characteristics and you're using those as a model, and they're giving you their energy in order to help you transcend all of those limiting habits and patterns and beliefs. And then, the end goal is to achieve union with that highest source. But it's using this intermediary, this bridge of an entity that has specific characteristics. So you're able to really identify and relate with that and connect to it from both your human level and from your higher levels, which really helps us because it's fully integrated into all the levels of our being. It's not just saying, okay, I'm touching the highest source up here, but nothing's happening down here. And that's too much up there for a lot of people. They're not able
It's
to connect
bringing it
that.
all together.
Yeah.
Exactly
Your
right.
polarities,
Exactly what you're
your
saying.
polarities have to come together at the heartbeat, at the
Yeah.
center. I mean, NASA discovered the heartbeat of the cosmos, and they can't identify where it came from. This was only I think it was like this year, it was a couple of months ago. You can look up the studies. It's fascinating. When you really truly couple your intention with your action, you amplify yourself as a vortex of creation, especially in union with someone. When you're in union with a person or in union with a thing, everything has consciousness to it. So akashically, we're looking at it from a very higher perspective. So I hope that answered a little bit, but everything is a frequency.
Yeah.
We all hold a sound,
I
or
like
if you
this
want to sound,
frequency.
a note of the divine cosmos of the universe, the symphony of the cosmos, literally.
Yes, absolutely. And I feel like I have a very practical way, because I feel like a lot of people may very disconnect from the idea of deities and gods because it sounds like paganism. And a lot of people don't resonate with that, especially if they're not from Asia, from India, where these things are normal and they're completely integrated with also the idea of potentially Christ, right? So I had a very beautiful experience once during a meditation in which I have really connected with deities which I did not believe in before. And I realized what deities really are. So again, we are like, the whole universe is God, the whole universe, and we are pieces of it as much as all of it, right? Everything is a piece of it and it's all of it, because it's a continuum. It's this huge bowl that contains all of the functions just now scattered around. And all of these functions are all different frequencies that simply are very pure, that are a very specific function that is just in a spectrum. So what is a deity? A deity is a specific function or characteristic. So I started realizing during this meditation, I started getting messages, downloading messages from deities that will tell me their name and what they were doing and what their function in the world is. And I started looking them on Google, looking the names they were giving me. And I actually found them. Like, they were deities I had never heard of, very ancient, like Sumeric, like from very ancient cultures. And the descriptions they were giving me, they were real, like they were truly exactly real. And so I connected with one which was called Antu, which is was the deity of the darkness and the light, and because of that he could walk through the darkness and walk through the shadow. And another one, I don't remember all the names, I've written them down, which was the goddess of fertility. And I realized that what that is actually the process of making fruit. In everything in the world, every time something makes a fruit, that's a specific frequency, a specific function that is the same for all of them, and that's the deity attached to it. So the deity is the process, the function in the universe, the frequency that embodies all of the necessary steps to make a fruit, to make a baby, because it's the same process of making a fruit. And so the god, that makes sense. Then the goddess of fertility. So deities are really a complex mix of frequencies that embody all that we need to do for a specific function. And so it goes together with using the spirit animals, for example, to help us in our awakening, because it's the same exact thing. So like what we're doing is basically, as much as we use plants to join us again so that we can become one again and we can help each other and heal each other by communicating and by joining our consciousness, we can do the same with deities, we can do the same with spirit animals, we can do the same in animals away. What we're doing is we are reintegrating these pieces of ourselves that we have been missing, that we have lost, and because of that we are becoming whole. So if we need to go through a challenge, for example, and we're lacking courage, we can ask the deity of courage, or we can ask courage to a panther, to a leopard,
invoke
like
the spirit
bear.
of the animal, right?
We
A
can invoke
bear, a wolf,
yeah,
like these
exactly, because
are powerful.
those beings contain and embody the frequency that we are missing, but we are them as well. We are everything. So once we understand that in the quantum field we are everything, we're all of these things, we can use all of those things to embody them and to include them in our field of awareness and in our aura and in our identity. And once we include them, it's like us bringing back pieces that we have lost so that we can go back to oneness. And I use these things all the time in my practice. Like whenever I need, I embody the frequency that I'm missing. And I use rapé as well, that you taught me to use to like help me join all of these frequencies together, so that unfortunately what most people don't understand is that there is no way to overcome certain challenges unless you have the skills that you need to have for you to overcome that challenge. So everything is perfect in the universe and it's very consistent. So someone who has overcome, like it's not by chance that people like Elon Musk become super rich and some other people become super poor. They have different skills, different capabilities, and different potentials given to also lack of or presence of money. But money is also something that you have, right? So for this means that for you to achieve a certain goal, you need to have a certain kind of things. And if you have less than one, you need more than another, right? And so if you have lesser money, you need more skills, for example. And so it's all a matter of balance, but ultimately there is no way to achieve a certain goal without having all the skills and all the things you need to overcome that challenge, to reach that goal. And so this is a beautiful way, using the quantum energy healing and what you're doing, and giving people their Akashic record and making them understand also how all the patterns they're having, they're actually repeating patterns from previous lifetimes that they need to resolve for them to move past that part, because in the quantum field, what it's really like things can travel in the space time in a way that we don't really understand, which means that we can have particles from past lives that are still present, quantically speaking, in the present. And so until we resolve them and we get rid of them, they're going to be in our quantum field in the present as well, because the present and the past is ever existing. And to explain this, I want to like, there are people that say that a year, I think in the yogic system, like a year of God is 1,000 years for us or something like that.
There's different delineations.
Yeah, they're different. But
it's even more
the
than
yugas.
that.
You mean, are you referring to the yugas?
Like 1 year of Brahma is, I think, like 432,000 years or something like that.
Yeah, and so this is, but why? Because this is to, I think this is important.
Or that's
to explain.
1 day. Sorry, not even 1 year.
So this is explain why the quantum field is all ever present at the same time. So imagine you are a fruit fly, okay? Imagine you are a fruit fly, and imagine you are the Earth. Your sense of time is going to be completely different, because the amount of, like, the fruit fly lives a few days. And so that means that for a fruit fly, a millisecond is an important amount of time, because in a millisecond the fruit fly can travel a lot, right? So for us
Mm-hmm.
that we are much bigger than the fruit fly, that amount of time is very little. We barely notice it. We don't have the organs needed to notice all the movements that the fruit fly makes in that amount of time, because for us, for how big we are, that amount of time is useless. So we don't need to have that kind of resolution on time. But for a fruit fly, that's very meaningful for its survival. So same thing for the
Mm-hmm.
earth. The earth is so big that for its own survival, the earth doesn't need to know everything that happens every second that for us is important. And so for God, for like the universe itself, all the things that happen in 1,000 years are really a millisecond, because for the whole universe, all that is happening in 1,000 years for us is just kind of, yeah, not really makes it, doesn't make a big difference, right? And so that means that whenever, this is what the quantum, why the quantum field is ever existing at all times, because even if we see as a fruit fly all these different points in time, they makes us see all these different present made of seconds, right? And so for us,
Mm-hmm.
what we just did a second ago doesn't exist anymore in the present, because we have this resolution of time that is 1 second. For the earth, what we just did a second ago still exists, because the earth has a resolution of time that includes like a year for us. It's a second for the earth, and so in that second, all the things that happen in a year are all there. And so this is why then there are people that, if you tap to into the consciousness of the universe, they can really download all of this information that seems like part of a past lifetime, and you're like, how do you know? Because these things are all ever
Right.
present in the consciousness
Ever
of the
present.
universe.
Yeah,
Exactly.
everything is folding over itself. It's overlapping. It's all completely intertwined. There's no construct of time up there beyond this dimension, because again, the density is now becoming more of the higher up, the consciousness, the sound. Like, there's no coincidence. We look at, as your consciousness is descending, the first thing that is thought, vision. You have to visualize it, and then creation of sound. What's the first thing a child does when they come into the world? They announce to themselves, I'm here, to announce to the world they're here, right?
That's
And
funny.
what's the first thing? Huh?
My mom says, it's funny. My mom says that I was a weird child, because when I was born, instead of crying, I was laughing. I was smiling, and they had to beat me
See?
up to make
They
me
hated me.
cry. They had to beat, because it's like they need to make sure that I respond to stimuli in the right way. So they need
Right.
to be sure that I'm intelligent, right? So I didn't have any brain damage. So it was like, she's smiling. They had to beat me in my butt, like just spank me for them, for me to cry. That's what I know. And she says that I was laughing all the time in the hospital, to the point that people will come and check who was laughing, and it was me, baby.
Aw.
That's
Then
so beautiful.
you made your sound. You made your sound
Yes.
as a giggle. That was your first introduction to this world, to the timeline, you know? So it's beautiful when you look at how expansive your soul is. The radiance of each individual soul is so powerful and so grand. And there is no limitations. There's no limitations up there. So why do we even bother thinking we have limitations here? You know? Yeah, it's insane. It's incredible how the duality of this timeline has rigged everything up to keep us separate from our true divine, inner
Yeah.
knowing,
Oneness.
I'd like
Yes.
right?
to ask you a question from your perspective, because you've worked with the Akashic Records so much. Where do you see our future going as a collective, as a society? Like, what direction? Because I think a lot of people have different views on this. You can talk about like the 3-dimensional to 5-dimensional shift. You can talk about, the apocalypse. You can talk about a lot of different angles, but I'm interested to see like what you think about this and where you think we could potentially go. And obviously it's going to be a range of possibilities. We don't have any direct certainty, but from your perspective, what do you see as some possibilities for that?
So what I've learned from sitting with the records myself and from reading them for other people as well is our next evolutionary step as a consciousness is to become the Palladians. They're the future us that's looking down at us going, come on, you guys, you can do it, you can do it, you can do it. What does that mean for us? They're a higher consciousness. They are operating at the fifth dimension. If you can recall earlier in the conversation, the Akashic records, the first records people hit is usually the fifth dimension where the Pleiades are. Right, and then the ones I work with tend to be up in the 13th to 15th dimension with the Arcturians and the Andromedans. Those guys, they're a little higher up, so it's a denser consciousness up there. And the Arcturians were the beginning people that created the Lemurians and Atlanteans and all, and just so forth. So between all of these incredible galactic families, we have various galactic families of the Syrians, the Lyrans, Metonkins, all these different places from Xerxes, all the different galaxies areas. But getting back to where we're going is, in order for us to ascend to that fifth dimensional consciousness, we already started this. The train was already started in 2012, right? When people were like, oh, the Mayan calendar said we're going to destroy, we're going to, oh my God, we're all going to die. It's like, well, part of our old consciousness is going to die. But that means the new expansive wave of consciousness is coming in. What does that look like? Remember how I said that we all have to take on creation, preservation, or destruction? But we all serve source in either of the three stages that we're in constantly. So, in order for us to reach a higher, purer state, we have to go into the creation process. What kickstarts the creation process from the preservation? Destruction. Something has to be a positive charge to that negative to create the boom boom.
Yeah,
right?
It's like a wave in the
And
ocean,
so,
right? The wave has to rise for a wave to rise. Something else, another wave has to be destroyed because
Right.
there are ups and downs, right? And so the universe is expanding in waves, and like every wave has to come to down for a new wave to emerge. That's
Right.
really, nothing is created, nothing
It's
is
the
destroyed.
natural law.
It's just, yeah, exactly.
It's the natural way that wavelengths operate.
Yeah.
And because we're first dimensional sound frequency,
Yeah.
we are in a wave constantly. So I used to say this to my clients because I used to do groups over, and as part of my counseling, I did some stuff afterwards after I got into becoming a sound healer. And I worked at a beautiful outpatient here in Agora Hills, and I would do the esoteric spirit classes and teaching people how to connect with themselves at the chakra level and frequency level. I would use my chakapa oftentimes as an example, and chakapa is a leaf rattle. So I'd say, you're this beautiful chakapa, and you have said, I no longer want to continue just being vibrating with okay, with accepting abandonment. I'm done with this shit. I want my consciousness to ascend, to stop looking at the same pattern. I want to stop being just an earthling. I want to go be a Palladian. Okay. Source says, okay, you ready for the ride? Because that means you're going to have to climb that wavelength up and release particles and elementals that no longer serve your trajectory. Make sense? Right? So when you raise the frequency, what do you think happens to the Chakapa? Does the Chakapa just say, I'm just going to go up? Hell no, you got to shake some shit off that ain't working no more. So you go, ah, oh my God, this kind of sucks. I'm really shaking. Oh my God, I'm letting go of this person that was a dick to me. Holy crap, my relationships are totally changing. Oh my God, I'm out of this job that made me feel complacent. Oh. Is it a very pretty process? No, it typically hurts. But you're seeing parts of the old fall off for the new vibration and frequency to come forward. So we're going from being just human being earthlings that were in a destructive pattern with our financials, our legal systems, our religious and spiritual systems, our relationship with our environment, all the things that no longer serve this consciousness trajectory we're going on are going to get exposed, shoved in our face, and we are then given the free will to say, you know what? No, I'm not doing that shit anymore.
I'm on that path.
Right?
I'm one of the people that expose these kind of things. Like, so
Yes.
I work on these every day because it's really important to, it's
Because
part of
we
like,
have to.
I had a Kundalini awakening. And so I have realized really my mission in the world, what my mission in the world is. And I have a lot of downloads for the divine, thanks to different like shamanic medicine. But like, it's really, once you
It's
understand
about
your mission,
releasing.
it's
You have to
absolutely
let go
releasing.
of
Have
your,
to
like, because when you
go.
get an upgrade on your iPhone, when
Mhm.
your iPhone says you're ready for an upgrade, it has to let go of old programs and programming to make way for the upgrade. The same thing happens for our consciousness. So we're going through right now, just looking at the present day, how it is. Look at our environment. It's going nuts. Look at the situation around the world. Wars. Just crazy shit's happening. Financial systems are collapsing. The spiritual leaders are being exposed that weren't so spiritual.
Science
You know
fraud
what
is
I
being
mean?
exposed
So
in
much
a
is being
bad way.
exposed because that consciousness is our trajectory of going to be Palladians can no longer tolerate the lower frequencies that are incongruent to being love, authentic,
Yeah.
radical, integrated love.
And it's all part of a journey. It's not that it's not even nobody's fault in a sense. It's like it's just
No,
really
it's
how the world is in the sense of like it's the natural expansion. You go from the lowest chakras, from the grosser kind of energy to a refinement, like in alchemy, that you have this
mhm,
sublimation of things. What we're actually doing is really we are sublimating, right? We're having this constant sublimation that make us burn and burn out things that don't serve us anymore and
Yeah.
shed away things that don't serve us anymore to the point that we become
exactly.
more and more spiritual, more and more pure. And this follows a path. So for example, I don't really fully agree with fully vegan diet for kids in the sense that like I think everything has to have their own initial development in a sense. And then after we develop in a certain way, then we can get to purer and purer lifestyles to the point of getting to fruitarianism, in which you really eat only the fruit that the plant gives you. But we're going to get to a generation because now we're in a step of transition, right? Once we're going to be fully in our next consciousness level, then we probably are going to be born fruitarian already. So we're not going to need to eat anything else than fruit as kids. But these needs, like it's our brain, our brain is evolving as much as our body is evolving. And so we are right now in a stage of evolution. But this doesn't happen in a way that is the same for everybody, because it's in waves. And as much as it's in waves from in a time, it's also on a space level. And so that's why there are some parts of the world that are more in conflict and some parts of the world that are more awakened. Some people in some communities that are more in conflict and more unconscious, and some others
Mhm,
that are more conscious. So it happens in patches, right? It's not like the same everywhere. So it happens in patches, but it's also in a wave kind of way. And so whenever a
mhm,
community or a person in a family awakens and starts awakening, so that starts creating a wave in all the space, spatially and temporarily, right?
oh
Temporarily,
yeah.
it creates as a wave of change and of awakening. And so it all has
Mhm,
to do with a lot of different things that go from us reactivating our chakras and being from our root chakras to our reawakening our crown chakras. So we are really increasing the vibration of the earth. And what are the chakras ultimately? Are really the different wavelengths of the earth, of the matter of the earth that gets more purified and more sublimated, right? In the same
right.
way our spirit needs to rise and rise to higher vibrations, and our brain needs to grow from the inner parts, which is the reptilian and the limbic brain, to the more external
To the more
cortical brain. So everything is
sophisticated
to
parts,
go
right?
bloom into a higher level, a better consciousness. But these things to go together, because we are at all times, as we said so far, we're at all times matter and wave. We are particles and
Mhm,
we're waves at all times. And so there's no way for us physically to have spiritual to have a certain vibration unless our body is made in a certain way. And so that's why
right.
we need the aid of, also spiritually speaking, deities, or we need the help of different kinds of medicine. We need the help of different kinds of food, of different kinds of practices,
Even
because all
different
of
kinds
those
of
things.
music,
Oh yeah,
and
absolutely.
sound.
Yeah.
Biofield tuning that, Dr. Valerie Hunt from UCLA in 1978 was the first physicist who actually studied the magnetic sound and the wavelength confirmation that came off of the human body. We have like EKGs, ECGs, because they measure the megahertz coming off your body. The biofield is actually a term that was coined in 2008 by the National Institute of Health as being the collective field of magnetic energy your body radiates. Dr. Valerie Hunt in 1978 did the studies on it, and she found that the lowest frequency a human body can be at is 250 megahertz before it falls into complete disease.
Mm.
And now, by her studies, she used the Bose-Einstein scale, the SPEC scale, the Sputnik environmental scale also. These are all ways that study the biofield in the body. We found that the root chakra, the most beautiful frequency that brings that into alignment, is 396. The sacral chakra, 417. The manipura, 528.
So
The
same with
heart,
the
639. The throat, 741. 852 the third eye, 963 on the top. So it's incredible. 936, sorry, on the top. So the more frequency and the more alignment you are from going, and then we look at even like the chakras, what they're broken up as. What is the root chakra? Security. Who am I? How am I in the world? If I'm in constant scarcity and fear, I'm low vibrationally operating. She found that the person that is more aligned, that has more dedication to a mindfulness practice, a spirituality practice, a meditative practice, monks, she found were vibrating at over 1,200 megahertz.
Mm.
this
Reiki
goes all
masters
together. This goes all
vibrate
together
at
with vibration.
800 megahertz. So this is why we can do work across the world without having to be in the same room with the person, because we are already accessing a higher frequency, which means a higher dimensional plane. Each chakra represents a dimension, just as each chakra is aligned to a layer in our aura.
Yes. And I want to give some physical ideas to people about this because I feel like people don't understand what wavelengths really are. So let's explain wavelengths in light terms first. So the spectrum of light goes from red to
Yes.
from far red to far ultraviolet light. So what's the difference between all these different frequencies? Because between red and there is like orange and yellow and then green and blue and so all the colors of the rainbow, right? So the red light is actually the first kind of light we are capable of seeing as kids. And the first kind of light, and it's also very warm, right? Contains a lot of infrared light is used in saunas, for example, because it's a very warm kind of light. It's very high in energy. So the wavelengths, and if you're watching the video, you're gonna have a better experience of this explanation. The wavelengths which are lower in hertz, which is the frequency. So the lower frequency is basically what's the frequency in a wave? Imagine the waves of an ocean. The frequency is the frequency at which the waves actually happen, right? And so the slower the waves are, the more the frequency is low, right? But the slower the frequency is, usually the bigger the waves are. So the wavelength is longer when the frequency is lower, right? And so lower, so red wavelengths and infrared wavelengths are actually have very big wavelengths. What is a wavelength? Is the length of the wave, right? So those are very big.
That's from one peak to the next peak.
To the next peak.
How much
but
it's vibrating, how quickly it's vibrating, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But they're also very slow, right? In the sense that they have a slower frequency. So these are bigger in a sense. And so these waves are very, very good at warming up our body, for example, but they're not very good at traveling because they're very slow and they lose energy at some point, right? And instead, on the opposite way, on the opposite side, we have the ultraviolet or the blue or the ultraviolet light, which has a very short frequency. And so, has a very short wavelength, but a very high
wavelength. Yeah.
So the frequency is like 680 or something when you get to, or 780 is when you get to ultraviolet light. And so that means that it's a very, very high frequency. So there are peaks very often, basically it's very short. But then the wavelength can travel very far because it has a much easier path because it travels with a much higher kind of vibrational frequency, right? And so the same is our chakra. What we most people don't see is that what we are is just really bubbles that pop out of the planet, right? And so the earth is made of these very, very warm, hot core that vibrates and emits all of this energy outside. And when the energy eats the surface, that's when things are born and plants are created and humans are born. That's the energy of the core of the earth that keeps making us pop out. And then as we lose that energy, we go back to the earth, right? So that's really what we are, these constant bubbling up of the surface, like a huge pot of sauce in which the bubbles pop out and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm being born. And then when they go back to the earth, they're like, oh, I'm dying. We're just bubbles that detach from the source, right? And so as we do that though, we're also allowing the vibration of the earth to increase. And so that's why our chakras go from the bottom to the top to have higher frequencies, because that's the earth itself, the molecules of the earth, they go from a lower frequency to a higher frequency as they go back in space, right? And so the higher frequencies are always higher, but also they're capable of traveling better. That's why, as you're saying, all these masters, yoga masters and guru, they can travel across time with their thoughts, and they're telepathic, and they can really affect the world in a much, much bigger ways, because they vibrate on a much higher frequency, which means that their waves are very tiny but very frequent, right? And so they can travel across the globe much faster, much easier.
Yeah.
And we don't see those things.
Another interesting thing about this, speaking about yoga masters, is that when you die, there's a lot of different exits you can leave, your soul can leave your body from, right? And all of these, except for one, are natural orifices of the body. So you can come out of the anal or the genital canal, you can come out of the mouth, you can come out of the nose, you can come out of the ears, you can come out of the eyes. And the higher up you go, the more in a general positive vibration your state after death is going to be. So the more consciousness you're going to be able to bring in. And the top hole is the one that, again, this is a hole when we're born. It's actually the top of the head. There's a fontanelle here, which is a soft spot in the skull that actually seals up, I think, around by the time you get around to be 6 months, years old, something like that. But this hole, this is the true goal of yogis, is like they want to achieve something called mahasamadhi. Samadhi being the state of union, maha meaning great. So this is the state where when you die, when you consciously decide to leave your body, in this case, you're actually going up. Your energy is going up so high and so intensely that you recreate this fontanelle on the top of your head, and you come out at the top of your head. And this is the way that they say, if you achieve this kind of death, you don't have to come back to earth again. You're finished. You're completely done.
You have sublimated. You have sublimated your spirit.
But yeah, all of these things about frequency are so important too, because we can utilize these tools in a very powerful way to heal ourselves. Even the exact same numbers you said, you can use those frequencies. And that's what we do in sound healing. That's what we do when we sing together. We use these frequencies to interact with these different energetic frequency points of our body. And when we're able to do that in a way, we're actually able to, maybe you're vibrating a little bit too low in your root chakra, you're able to prime it with the right frequency. You're saying, okay, this is what you should be at. You bring your awareness down there, you have this particular frequency, and it's going to calibrate that chakra to its correct state, which is going to bring you back into balance. There's another interesting study that I've seen where they basically put different electrodes on different sides of people's body. And what they realized was, in the disease state, the frequency between the two different sides, there would be a bigger difference. So they were more out of balance between the two sides of their body. And this means they're not in central alignment, but it also, you were able to predict diseases from this. Like if you had a misalignment, let's say around your heart chakra, you'd more likely you'd have a heart problem or a problem with your lungs, with your respiratory system. And these things both go hand in hand. You can really affect these different states of disease with these frequencies, with bringing yourself back into alignment. When you come back into that center, a lot of these energetic misalignments, they're causing misalignments in the physical body, because all of these things are mirroring each other. You have the physical body is mirroring the energetic body, which is mirroring the mental thought body, and they all correlate to each other. They all have these interconnected relationships where you can affect one from the other. And obviously, the more subtle of the body that you're interacting with, the more profound the effects can be. So when you're interacting with the physical body, it's going to take a lot of intervention. It's going to be a much more intense process. Maybe you're talking like surgery, you're taking like Western medicine, where it's it's working only on the physical. But then when you get to the level of the energetic or the thought body, you're using energy to realign your frequency, or using the power of meditation to realign your mental state so that you come back to that center. You notice that these energetic and these physical problems just disappear because you're back in alignment. You're back in the healed, healthy, central state of your body.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean that's definitely the base of what I would say Ayurveda medicine is, right? Dr. Vasant Lad, one of my favorites, is actually Dr. David Frawley. Love his literature on Ayurveda medicine. It's very much similar to what you're talking about here.
absolutely. So it's absolutely true. Like every time we listen to different frequencies, we're actually synchronizing our molecules in our body, our mind, our everything is a frequency. And so we're
Mhm.
tapping into higher frequencies. And so we can use sound as much as molecules are affected by vicinity, by proximity with molecules that vibrate in the same frequency. They kind of like interact with each other. We are the same, right? And so we are affected by the waves. They hit our body, they go to our brain, and they tell us this is the frequency you need to vibrate on. So we can use those things as well. And I would love to also
Oh,
touch on not just this is. I feel like this part is a different kind of dimension in the sense that like it's a more spiritual and more sound related by dimension. But there is a whole earthy, more earthy type of dimension that I think has to do with using really the medicine from the earth, the herbal medicine, and I think shamanic medicine is one of the main, most important ways of using this interaction between the different functions in the world, in the universe, and rejoining those things. And so you practice also shamanic medicine. I wanted to ask you just how you started, what kind of medicine you practice, and how would you suggest people to use those things?
absolutely. Thank you for making that segue because sound has been part of the healing practices of mankind since the beginning of time, really. Whether we used it for celebration, for marking of a particular stage of life, for a particular event, for a ritual, for grieving, whatever it is, that we always had, sound was very present, and especially drum, all throughout all the entire universe, and not universe, but the world, really. The very first sound instrument that was registered was a sistrum from Egypt that was used as sound medicine. And it's this kind of looking, it has like little bells. They chime into each other. It's kind of like they clap into each other. And they sound ringing. And I don't have a sistrum here, but the next most popular one was a didgeridoo. That was one of the older ones also. And then drumming, drums. The shamans would enter meditative states with drums. And we know that drums and rattles and, gourds and chimes and all these things have a various way of aiding the body and assisting the body in wellness. The Greeks were the first that started to use it actually for medical practices. Pythagoras, the father of mathematics, was the first one who he actually developed the musical scale too. Brilliant man, clearly, right? He was walking by a blacksmith's workshop and he heard the clinging of the metal against the metal. And he noticed he was very attuned to when his body reacted to this sound. And he closed his eyes and he began to just let his body be guided towards the sound. And when he got to the blacksmith as he was banging away, he noticed he felt different. He felt a shift in his body. So the Greeks were the first that actually began to use lyres, those little guitar instruments, drums, and different tuning sounds to help the surgeries. They would notice that the blood flow would increase or decrease according to what chords were being played. This also plays into the understanding that each chakra has a frequency and a chord. You see what I'm saying? How divinely created the human capsule is, right? When
Absolutely.
you and Source were up there and said, what is going to be the coolest meat ship we can take our spirit into this journey with? Because we're not a starship, we're a meat ship, we're, an elemental ship. You know, we were devised with such radiance in that even at the most subtle levels of how sound affects us, it can heal us and improve our health, right? Shamanic medicine starts with everything from being outside and earthing, sitting with the bees. They give you 432 megahertz, which has been shown in studies to regulate the right and left hemispheres and the communication through the corpus callosum. Any parts of your brain that are overfunctioning and underfunctioning become right functioning in homeostatic frequency when exposed to long-term 432 megahertz, which happens to also be the frequency that Mother Earth is giving to you through your feet. Your feet are receptors. They're chakra receptors. And so when we incorporate things as drums, as rattles, hold on, it sounds like there's like a dump truck.
Yeah, it's
Can
pretty
you
loud.
close the window?
You're saying.
So you were saying.
So as I was saying, is that sound is a way that we heal ourselves. I'm going to show you one of my instruments from my people. I am, as I mentioned earlier in the podcast, my spirit name is Lumina Shikoat Hekat Vitzilin. Hekat is the wind in Nahuatl. Vitzilin means hummingbird. So I am the hummingbird of the wind, and part of my instruments are to use wind instruments. This is an original earth medicine called Etekokoli in the Mexica language. And this is what we use for healing as well. So we would use this in ceremonies, in operations, whenever we're doing limpias or cleansing on individual bodies in their biofields. We're going to blow this. I'm going to blow it and just hopefully
She's
it doesn't
about to
sound
blow
too loud.
a huge seashell.
Yes. So,
Check the
all right,
video.
let's enjoy. Or maybe not, who knows? So we would use these sounds to help women in labor when they were struggling, to help people that were also being in operations and stuff and having in surgeries. Um, Here's another one that we use also. This is called a resonator. It's called a death whistle, a Mexica death whistle, Nahuatl death whistle. So our warriors would actually run into battle with the drummers behind them, the Aztec drums, keeping rhythm, which has been shown in studies that actually helps everyone within this resonance of the drum to find the same heart rate. Matthew Tiller from the HeartMath Institute found that out in a study that when he played drums, it drops our cortisol level, raises the norepinephrine, opens up the veins and the nerves, and allows blood flow to bring all hearts in the resonance of that drum into the same sound. So that's another wind instrument is this guy. I won't play this one because it's literally terrifying. It sounds like a woman being ripped open and her heart taken out.
I want to hear it now.
Oh God. Okay, you asked for it. So here we go. This is a death whistle.
Okay, I feel like for the video is very, very mild, but
I don't know if it translates on the audio as well.
Yeah.
But if you guys are interested, you can look up a
It's
video on
terrifying.
YouTube. It is very, very intense sound. It's something that's gonna like make you feel a little bit uncomfortable inside of your core of your
It's
being.
almost Kali, right? A Kali kind of sound.
Definitely.
In the sense that it
Definitely.
embodies Kali is the deity, right, of kind of like destruction
Yes.
and death. But when you destroy, you can recreate the new, right? And so it's about ripping apart, as you're saying, ripping apart things so that something else can be born. Which is also what happens to women, you know, in a sense, like being open to give birth. So it makes total sense in that sense. So yes, it's beautiful. So absolutely, like sound is so important for healing because it aids. It's like again, we said it multiple times. Every energy that we receive in the form of any form, from waves to sounds to words to positive affirmations to sunlight, and including sounds such as music, it's all energy that our body can transmute and use because our body is an antenna for so many different things. We can use sound both as a wave that hits our body and hits our chakras, and so it makes different things, different parts of the body resonate with it. And we can use sound also by translating that signal through the ears on the brain. And so we use the effect that then the brain can translate into the body and into neurotransmitters in the body. And so it's
Right.
our body really can transmute all forms of energy we give it into something else. And if it's noise that is poisonous for you, or if it's music that is poisonous for you, or if the
Right.
lyrics are really not good for you and induce you codependency and induce you to do bad things in the world, that's what you're going to do. And if instead you use sounds and things that are more in tune with your
To heal.
soul and with your love and like with healing, then you're going to heal.
Hmm.
Like we can decide consciously. We need to start deciding
Right.
consciously what kind of music to listen to, what kind of things to do. And the fact that shamanic medicine, we're not talking about music, we're talking about medicine. We have had another episode in which we talked about music healing with Tom Rossi. I feel like it's one of the first episodes. Like
Hmm.
really music can be used for healing. So shamanic medicine includes as an essential part, and as the Greeks used to do, drumming and music as part of surgeries, are part of ceremonies that are needed to us again to embody all those pieces and frequencies that we are missing for us to embody the right version of ourselves, the proper skills that we need to overcome challenges. And so I'm
Right.
using the shamanic medicine that you taught me to use, which is rapid, to overcome my challenges and to really tap into my highest self. And I'm really finding so much benefits. And I feel like I would love for you to give an introduction to this beautiful
And also
medicine
the
as well.
drumming. Don't forget I taught you the drumming.
You
The
taught me drumming and I'm
shamanic
using
drumming.
to see. Absolutely. I'm waiting for you to bring me my new shamanic drum. But for now, I'm using Robie's drum. And oh my gosh, I'm finding so much benefit into the drumming. And I have different kinds of rattles and also the chacapa that you gave me. I feel like I love the rattles especially. And I really love that kind of healing to like help me release all the energy that I store, because when we go through stress, those things bring down our consciousness, bring down our energy, and then we need to rise up, right? And to rise up,
Right.
we need energy, and that energy can be
Hmm.
given by drums. And so if you use a drum and you really give to yourself a lot of energy that is in a higher vibration, then you can really use it and transmute it into consciousness, and that's what we can do. So
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. The drum is amazing. The shamanic drum is probably one of my favorite to work with, whether I'm serving people in ceremonies or on my own meditation as well. The drum can be invoking elements. It invokes dream states. It invokes, higher hypnotic states as well too. It's so powerful. And recognizing how sound can either hurt us or help us. That's something I thank you for bringing that up, because back in I believe it was the 1920s, John J. Rockefeller, actually made the conscious decision to tune all music from 432 to 440.
Mm.
And what science has found is when we put 432, we expose our cells to 432, the cells, the organelles within the cells are operating normally and in a healthy pattern, orderly pattern. They're not chaotic. When you put 440 exposed to the cells, it actually puts them in scarcity mode. What does the cell do in scarcity mode? It becomes as small as possible, and it shrinks out, it leaves out water, it pushes it out of its body, and it goes into survival state. So it puts the human body into survival state as it
So we
being
are aging
literally
because we're also
which
dehydrating and
exactly
burning more easily and oxidizing more
right.
easily. So who did that and in what
John
sense?
J.
Like,
Rockefeller.
so in what sense? All the music of what kind? Like on the
Because if
radio?
we can keep a society in scarcity and fear mode at the subatomic, most subtle level, without them really becoming conscious of it, we become easier to control.
Absolutely,
Mhm.
absolutely. That's what is happening. That's why
Right?
rich people have their house on the hills and society is always full of noises. You know what I noticed? Like by taking the metro in LA, it's a constant noise. There is this voice that unnecessarily and constantly tells you the next stop is gonna be blah blah. And it's very bothersome. It's really, really
Mm.
bothersome. And it puts people into a frustration mode that if like you're creating criminals. Like by doing those things, you're creating criminals. Same thing with like all the sirens in LA all the time. I do not believe there are so many emergencies in LA. I feel like there is an over abuse of sirens that police and fire department and all these departments make, because it's impossible that they turn on and off and then to just, and all of that is pollution. It's
Right.
pollution on our body.
And not to mention all of the noises of all the electronics we have in
Oh,
our house.
yeah.
Like think about in LA, especially all the people that have air conditioning units that are making that constant buzz, your refrigerator, even something as subtle as like your Wi-Fi. When this is emitting a signal that you can't necessarily hear it, but it's still impacting your physical and energetic
At the
form because it's this
biomagnetic fields.
exactly. And it's the same way that like our Earth has its own biomagnetic field. And when, for example, when there's big solar flares, like I know we had a couple big solar flares this past weekend, that's actually interfering with the biomagnetic sphere of the Earth. This again, the Earth also has a toroidal field. Funny, everything has toroidal fields in nature.
Just
It's
like
natural.
the Earth, of course.
Yeah. And when the sun emits these big solar flares, they actually weaken the magnetic field of Earth. And in the same way, when we have all of these inputs of different frequencies that are interacting with our biomagnetic sphere, we're actually weakening our aura, we're weakening our healing capacity. We're becoming more susceptible to disease. We're becoming more susceptible to negative thinking. We're becoming more manipulatable. We're becoming people that, we're easy to be controlled because we're not in alignment. We're not connected to our truest self. We're not in the full healthy healed mode where we're able to, stand in our sovereignty and really work from our heart's truest purpose. Instead, we're off center, we're off balance, we're unhealthy, and we're always doing things to try to get back into balance instead of always acting from that place of balance. We have to put so much extra energy into healing, into recentering, to even be able to act in a way that's in alignment. Whereas if we created a world instead that was the prime focus, everything was designed to have us constantly be in a state of harmony, exactly what you're saying, like tuning our music to 432 hertz instead of 440. All of these external things would instead help us to stay in balance, to stay in our centers, rather than having to fight against it. They would be naturally supporting us. So this is how we need to re-engineer our world. We need to re-engineer our world in a way that really helps us to stay in our core, in our center, in alignment and balance, because without these things, then we're expending so much extra energy to get back to that. And there's so many people also that don't even realize they're out of balance and they're acting from that place of imbalance. And that's where the healing comes in. But then once we heal, we need to again change. So what you're saying with the experience of the rattle, right? When you're going up the rattle, all these things are falling off. And now we're experiencing that, where these things that are not serving us, that are not helping us stay in that center, in that aligned state, are beginning to fall off. And that's what I also believe is happening in the world. And that's our role as healers, as teachers, is to, expedite that process, make that more easy for people, so that we've already, what you said, we've already tread the deep traumas of our own being. We know how to help people that are going through those same things that we've gone through. We can help them, we can guide them, we can subtly direct the world to a position where everyone is consciously more aligned, because that's the way that the world is working now. That's the design of the world, rather than to exploit people. Exactly.
We're going that way. We got the Palladians are like, y'all have got some work to do. Come on, man. You got to evolve into being us. So we have to, in a sense, move forward into that trajectory.
There's no choice.
And just to be clear, 432 megahertz is cool music, by the way. John Lennon, Bob Marley, and Jimi Hendrix tuned at 432.
Yeah.
And the most famous 528 megahertz song in the world, Imagine by John Lennon.
It's a beautiful song.
Okay. Like, they knew what's up, how to heal you with music.
If I'm correct, that's the frequency of the heart chakra, right?
It is the frequency. It is the frequency that begins to allow the ionic bonds of your DNA to loosen up, to replicate. Because it's considered the frequency of love. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing.
That's so beautiful. I didn't know that. Thank you for sharing that wisdom with us.
There's so much that she could share. And
we're gonna have to do another episode sometime soon for sharing.
So thank you so much, Lumina, for being with us today. I think we need to wrap up because we're almost 2 hours long episode.
I think so, yeah.
And so I hope next time, we're gonna have another episode soon with you. But yeah,
in the meantime, we'd love it if you have anything that you want to share with people. If you have like a website, a way for people to get in contact with you, or any offerings that you currently have, if you'd like to have a couple minutes to promote yourself, we'd love to give you that space.
Thank you. First of all, I want to say thank you for having me on. It was lovely to have this, it was like a morning cacao conversation. We all shared it today.
All together, without knowing we all had cacao.
We're gonna have to do this a little bit more often. I really enjoyed it because you guys are very fun to talk to. So thank you so much. I wanted to say that first.
Oh, thank you too.
Thank you. Thank you. And speaking of some events I have coming up, I'm super excited to be doing a couple of really great events coming up. Actually, I lead Women's Sweat Lodge, Temazcal, which is another day we can have a podcast about that. Temazcal is the hot house, and now well, it means the house of steam and vapors. And so every Mexica home in the ancient empire used to have a sweat lodge in it. And so we heal ourselves with detoxifying with these heated up volcanic rocks. We throw herb infused water on it, and we inhale the vapors. We do drumming, shamanic medicine drumming, and songs that are a higher frequency that allow us to heal the mind, body, spirit, and emotions in there. So I do those first Friday of the month here in East Los Angeles at Costa de Healing. So
Highly
look it up on
advised.
Instagram. Yes, thank you. Look up Costa de Healing, and
And we can
I
link that
also
also in the
do.
description for you guys.
Thank you. Thanks for doing that. I also do community combo detoxes too, as well. I lead those groups. I serve that medicine very gratefully and humbly. So I do that. I am an Akashic Records reader. You can look up my website on www.soulhealing.energy. On Instagram, I'm soulhealing.energy, and so you can keep up with a lot of my events there. I serve a lot of different medicines. I serve a lot of different modalities: Akashic Records reading, acupressure, biofield tuning, NLP, all these different ways of also serving individuals. And I do Akashic counseling. So I teach people how to go into the Akashic Records. I teach people how to have sacred ceremonies with plant medicines like rapé and cacao and very like sanangan and all these other medicines that come from the Amazon have got very beautiful medicinal properties to help support the resources of our consciousness ascension as our body tries to catch up. Because we got to let go of stuff in our physical body so that our consciousness can keep ascending, right? So I serve with those medicines, and I'm always ready for a good talk and hangout. So just hit me up. How about that?
Yeah, that's
Amazing.
amazing. Thank you so much for being with us
Yeah.
today again. And guys, please reach out to her, check out her website, check out Casa de Healing. They really do. They're very invested into healing in a very 360 holistic way that involves all these Native Americans that really bring their own wisdom. And Patrick, the owner, is an incredible human being, and Sasha is incredible as well. So you guys are all great, and I want to interview Patrick at some point too. So let's wrap up, but
Yeah.
thank you guys for listening. Hopefully you get a lot of wisdom from this episode, and tune in for a next one with Lumina another time. But
Yeah.
let's wrap up for today, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you,
and
Lumina.
thank you Robbie, thank you everybody. Bye guys.
Thank
All
you.
right.